Are you planning a natural birth and you're trying to find all of the podcasts, all of the books, all of the information that's going to help you to do it? Well, I've got news for you, and it's probably going to be a little uncomfortable. And I don't want you to be afraid because I've got the map. And if you follow along with what I'm going to be teaching you, you're going to get out of it. But let me just tell you very quickly that I thought I was doing everything right. I had hired the midwife, I'd hired the doula, and I was consuming childbirth education for 9 months straight. And in the end, I almost got a C-section. If it wasn't for what I'm going to be teaching you inside of this masterclass, it probably would have happened, and I would have a much more traumatic birth story than I actually did. Hi, my name is Carly Bonderud, and this is the Empowered Birth Series, where I go deep into everything that you need to know to plan and get your empowered, true, natural birth. And if you have been following along with this series, then you already know we are going into the 20 natural birth traps, and this is trap number 20, the mainstream birth education that tells you that you need to do something different to actually have a natural birth, that you need to prepare your body for birth, that you need to be able to cope with the pain. And, sometimes you fall into those natural birth traps. Go and check out the rest of this series to know what all of those natural birth traps are. But the fact is that you have basically been programmed and taught that you need to do certain things to have a natural birth. When the truth is that your body is already designed to have a natural birth. That is the default setting. If you never induce, you will go into labor. If you never plan a C-section, you will eventually go into labor and birth your baby. If you never have a single intervention, as Flor Cruz of Badass Mother Birther has said before, if you were trapped in a closet or in flash flood, if you had an appendicitis, you'd probably be dead. But if you were going into labor, well, 3 days later, when they opened up the roads again and you were able to get out, you would have a baby and you would be breastfeeding that baby, more likely than being dead. But because of the way that society has basically become afraid of birth and the generations of trauma and the way that the medical system has basically appropriated the term natural birth, we have this epidemic of interventions in birth. And we have forgotten that natural birth is the default. So this then leads to you thinking that you can't have a VBAC because you're not allowed, or you're not allowed to go past your due date. There's so many things that you're told you're not allowed to do, or that it's not safe. And we forget over and over that medical systems really are there as a support network. They're a safety net in case something needs to change, in case you need extra support. But with the empowered birth method, we aim for a true natural birth and we pull back only as much as needed. So if you've been following along with this series, then you know that these master classes are deep dives. I don't give fluff in here. I make sure that you have the information and that it's accessible. The reason for this is simple. Way back when I was a first-time mom trying to find all of the information, there were pieces that were kept from me. I was not told effectively what the medical system was really trying to push me into. I didn't know that there was a difference between a small for gestational age baby and a true growth restriction. I didn't know that a lot of the interventions that were put in as routine were actually going to lead to me falling into a trap. I learned better after that birth. And then I found Improving Birth with Dawn Thompson. And I read articles from Kristen Pascucci of Birth Monopoly. And I realized that they actually weren't allowed to not allow me my home birth. And that is when I got good and mad. And I vowed that information would never again be gatekept from moms just because they couldn't pay for it or didn't know where to look for it. So here at Empowering Moms, I have a simple philosophy. Information is free, and I only charge for access to me and my coaching queens. So that basically means that everything within the master classes, I want you to treat this as if you had paid for it. I want you to go through these deep dive master classes and take notes. I want you to go and find the other trails that interest you, and I want you to get that education because, again, when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life, and no one can take that power from you again. So the more information that you have and the map you have to go through it and have that context, the less afraid that you're going to be, the less likely you're going to allow other people to tell you what you're allowed to do, and the less likely you're going to fall into those natural birth traps. Because as I talk about inside of my book, Your Empowered Birth, in the natural birth traps section and in Why Birth Goes Wrong, there's the composite character of Kate. Now, Kate is basically the culmination of all of the different moms, including my own story, who have been screwed over out of their natural birth, especially as a first timer. You know, we do everything right. We think that we're going to follow the map. We're going to hire the right care provider who says that they will support natural birth. And we go and we get a doula. We take childbirth classes. We join all of the mom groups and we're trying to get all of that information. But in the end, we still get screwed over. Why does that happen? Well, because of one simple thing. We're taught what to think, not how to think. And inside of this special deep dive masterclass, I'm going to tell you how you want to start thinking about your empowered birth. I'm also going to tell you how the mainstream education can be a trap and how to use it properly. Because, you know, if you keep staying afraid of birth, you're not going to be able to birth from a place of power instead of a place of fear. So how these master classes basically work is I'm going to share with you the overview of the story that I want to tell. Then I'm going to go into how mainstream education undermines your confidence, how it leads to unnecessary interventions, and how it sabotages your physiological birth. I'm going to share in this one about the dichotomy between the natural birth education perpetuated in the natural birth community versus the natural birth education that is perpetuated within the medical system. I'm also going to share with you a little bit more context and resources and how to apply it through the empowered birth method. And finally, I'll tell you about those 3 paths to empowered birth so that you really know where to go next if you like to take the deeper dive. But even if you prefer to just watch these surface videos, I'm just going to remind you that we have extras within Empowering Moms. So the deeper you go with Empowering Moms, the more treasures that you're going to uncover. And depending on when you've watched this video, I mean, it may be a few years from now, go check the description because I put transcripts into the actual description, a PDF transcript where you can go deeper. These are like little resource libraries. You can skim the surface and just read the bold text. You can read the blue text if you just want the headlines to find where you are orienting within the map that I weave for you. And I also embed links to other resources that you're going to want to take advantage of. If, however, this is just recently dropped, that transcript may not be available yet. That is because priority first goes to getting the master classes out themselves. They are the most powerful piece. Everything else is an extra. But if you ever have any questions or you want me to go deeper into something, you can always reach out to me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. I also encourage you to join the Empowered Birth newsletter because once a week I go deep into a topic and then I share with you both the empowered birth method and how it applies to other areas of your life as the empowered mom. I call it empowered mom magic. And this is the final piece of the empowered birth method because as I said, when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life. No one can take your power away from you again. And as an empowered birth queen, you're also a leader of your family and you are an inspiration to your community. So, what you really need to understand, though, is that you're going to want to take notes. Also, if you're doing the do-it-yourself path, take advantage of the rule of 3. Watch this video at least 3 times. The first time, you've got the overview. The second time, you've got your aha moments. The third time, You've basically been able to integrate the information, and now you can apply it to your own unique situation. And finally, if you do want to go deeper and you would like some more support, you just reach out to the team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, and we will get back to you within 3 to 5 business days. If, however, you are a newsletter subscriber, your path is a little different. All you have to do is hit reply to any of our weekly emails, and then we'll get back to you because we know that you are a subscriber in our community. And if you're a self-study VIP student, you can reply to any one of those emails. You can get access to us and hit us up and say, hey, I've got some issues with this. I'm kind of wondering if there's a resource on this. And we are more than happy to support you, because path number 3 within Empowering Moms, premium coaching, we don't work with everyone who comes to us. And we really want to make sure that you can do that work at whatever level that you're really at. So now that you basically know our structure, I also want to let you know about our philosophy and mission statement. It's been a while since I talked about this inside of the Deep Dive Masterclasses, and I just want to give you a quick refresher. The reason why I really want to get this information out there is because the longer that we keep it behind a paywall, the more likely it is that things are not going to shift and change. There have been birth workers that have spoken out against this for over 30 years. There are women that are much older than me who have been speaking out about this before I was even born. And there are moms that keep fighting to try to get their birth their way. There's moms that want to have VBACs. There's moms that want to have a home birth after multiple cesareans, and they don't have access to true information for whatever reason. They don't have access to supportive care providers, and they feel like they're backed into a corner. And here at Empowering Moms, I do not stand for that. I think that is not fair at all. You should be able to birth where you feel safest. You should be able to birth where you feel most supported. And if that's a hospital, just because you want a hands-off birth doesn't necessarily mean that you need to give that up if you are birthing in a hospital. And if you want to have a home birth and somebody says you're not allowed, well, I've been through that and it wasn't okay. And I have basically made it my mission to ensure that moms who want to have a home birth do not get pushed into a hospital birth that they could have avoided. I want to make sure that moms who don't actually need a C-section do not get pushed into a traumatic C-section just because they're not allowed to have a VBAC. So I'm really standing for moms being able to have more access. And because of that, I want to be able to put the proceeds from Empowering Moms into things that matter most, such as opening up birth houses, such as being able to get more education out to lower income, such as being able to actually shift our birth culture and help care providers to support their clients. And that is going to take more than just me. That is going to take all of us. So whether you're a birth worker or a mom who wants to have a natural birth, or you've just kind of stumbled upon this and you were like, I'm curious what Carly's doing, I just want to let you know that if you pay it forward, if you like, share, subscribe to the channel, pay it forward, comment, boost the algorithm, and get this out there, and you purchase a copy of my book even, that is going to create the ripple effect. And if you create the ripple effect, well, a drop in the ocean creates ripples. Many ripples create waves, and enough waves can change the tide. So it's going to take all of us. If you do want to collaborate with me, there is a path for that. Go check out my starter guide, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide for the philosophy and mission statement if you want to know more. But now we're going to get into the story because, I really did think that I was doing everything right. I was a star student. I have always been the type of person that if I want to learn something and get the results that I want, I'm going to go out and I'm going to seek that education and I'm going to find the best people to learn from. And I really thought that I had the best. So at the beginning of my pregnancy, I already had sort of realized I don't want to be in the hospital. I don't want to have a C-section. I don't want the epidural. So I already knew I'm going to be having a completely unmedicated birth and I'm going to be doing it at home. I need to get past my fear of natural birth. So I went and I learned about natural birth and unmedicated birth. And I learned about the fear, tension, pain cycle. So I now knew that the more I tense up, the more afraid I am, the more birth is going to hurt. So I'm like, oh, yeah, I definitely don't want to go to the hospital. Well, I'm going to need a midwife. This is where I ran into some mistakes. And if you read my book, Your Empowered Birth, in chapter 3, I actually outlined 7 mistakes that I made that I now warn all first time moms about. So you can go and check that out. I do have it inside my YouTube playlist as well if you don't have a copy of my book. And if you do want to support the Empowered Birth movement, again, if you get a copy of my book, in addition to that, you have your own copy to highlight and take notes with, and you have a physical copy in your hand that you can lend out to other moms. You can create a ripple effect. This makes a great gift for any mom who is wanting to have a natural birth. It also is something that I would suggest that you gift anybody who's saying, I'm thinking of trying to conceive in the next year or so, because the more prepared they are, the less likely they're going to fall into those natural birth traps. So I recognized, okay, I'm going to hire a midwife. And I made the mistake of thinking that all midwives are created equal, and they're not. And then I also was like, okay, I'm going to hire a doula. And I made the mistake of thinking that all doulas were the same, and they were not. And I also was like, I'm going to take childbirth classes. And I made the mistake of not taking the right childbirth classes for what I really wanted. So all of this education, while it was helpful for mainstream, for somebody who wanted to have a straightforward hospital birth, was not what I needed for my home birth. And the more I recognized where I got trapped after this traumatic birth happened, the more I realized, oh, moms don't know this stuff because it's not out there. Most of the stuff that's out there is just childbirth education. There's no map to put it all together. And I realized something else, and that was that moms basically keep going back to the experts. They keep asking the mom groups for more help. They run into one challenge and they ask for support, and then they're given a bunch of different tips and advice, and you don't know what to make sense of, and it just overwhelms you. I call this information overwhelm. And this basically led to me doubting my own intuition, which was saying, my baby is fine. I don't need to go to the hospital. I don't need to cancel my home birth. But because I didn't have the right education, I didn't know my rights at the time, I ended up getting tricked into the hospital, only to later find out all of this stuff after the fact when I started working with improving birth as a rally coordinator. Because after that birth, I'm like, nobody knows about this. And if I don't say something, who will? I need to do something about this. This is bigger than me. So I got out of my own way. I used to be really afraid of speaking out because I was a shy little wallflower. But through improving birth, first of all, with Dawn Thompson, I was just inspired by her and Kristen Pascucci and Jen Camel and Rebecca Decker. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do something to support these women. And then I ended up, well, I'm here today, right? Because of the fact that I just realized how much of a problem this was. And during the pandemic, there was a lot of things that happened in my personal life, but I knew that there needed to be a book that needed to be written, and I needed to be the one to write it. Because I noticed, like, if moms just keep following the experts and the experts just keep giving them the same stuff that's going to lead them down the path that they want them to go, the moms are never going to be able to tap into their own intuition. And if they continue to do that, they're going to keep falling into these traps. I need to write a book that's going to be the anti telling them what to think book. I need to write a book that's going to tell them how they can start thinking for themselves. I'm going to write a book that makes it so clear that they are hiring the experts, but they are not deferring to the experts, that they are going to follow their own path, that they are going to stand in their power, that they're basically going to do what I did. And that they're going to feel a lot more powerful from that. Because, there were moms that came to me back in 2014, 2015, all the way until 2020, and they would be like, I wish that I'd found you when I was still having my first baby. If I had found you before I had my first baby, then none of this trauma would have happened, because you have a map here. You need to charge money for this. You need to turn this into a business. And at the time I was like, I don't know if I can do that. But then I met Jenny in 2020, and Jenny told me how important, first of all, it was for me to have my book out there. And also she was like, how do I take your classes? And, when Jenny said that, I realized just how much this information is valuable. Because again, with mainstream education, you don't know where to go. It's all saying the same stuff, but it's perpetuating the same natural birth traps. How often do you see in the comment sections of mom groups when a mom is going to 42 weeks and suddenly you hear about that scary stillbirth rate? And that's scary until somebody says, well, it's 1 per 1,000 going to 2 per 1,000. Somebody who understands it, usually a doula, will speak up. But then a lot of people are like, yeah, but I'm afraid of that 1% thing happening. And they don't have the context. And, doulas and midwives and nurses, we're so busy helping moms. And I myself am now so busy helping moms and building, empowering moms and doing other things that I can't sit there and do a debate with a mom who is determined to tear down everything that I'm saying, or the labor and delivery nurse who seems to think that the mom should just induce because she's seen some catastrophic outcome happening. And again, fish can't see the water they swim in. So, I really do suggest that if you haven't already done so, go check out the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth mini challenge, because that is going to give you the context. And then read your Empowered Birth, because that is also giving you more of a map. So you can really see what's going on, because you need to be able to come to your birth from a place of power, not a place of fear. Okay, so how this basically undermines your confidence is that if you're following this mainstream education, you're still deferring to those experts and you're thinking to yourself, I don't know anything. I just have to keep asking other people questions, and I'm just going to keep getting more information. And that overwhelms you. And then you are still afraid at the end of your pregnancy. There's so many moms that are sitting there consuming birth information, but the second something comes up, maybe their care provider is pushing induction. Maybe their care provider is saying their baby is too small, whereas before it was perfectly fine up until 34 weeks. And then that usually is the magic number when suddenly everything that you thought was fine is going wrong. And they're saying that you actually need to have this. And you're like, wait a minute, I thought I was having a natural birth. My friend, you've just been bait and switched. Okay, you've been bait and switched, and it's not fair that they wait until that time, but usually category 5s wait until the last minute, and they're like, yeah, we support natural birth, and then actually, your baby's too big, your baby's too small, actually, doesn't seem like you have any signs of labor, so we should probably induce. And by the end of your pregnancy, you're just so tired. And you really don't have the energy to fight. So this is why the empowered birth method is so powerful. Because how this leads to unnecessary interventions, if you're following that mainstream birth education, either on the side of the medical side of it or the natural birth side, you're more likely to try to do all of the things to get into labor. Go check out some of my other videos where I talk about why you don't want to do all of the things, why you don't want to induce. Basically, you're going to end up with an induction, possibly a C-section. You'll agree to the membrane sweeps. You'll agree to the vaginal exams. You'll agree to additional monitoring. You'll agree to the IV. You'll agree to all of those other natural birth traps because, again, you're either on one side of the dichotomy or the other. There's no bridge. Either you're doing the medical side of natural birth where they say that you need to still do the vaginal exams and you don't question it, or you're on the crunchy side where they're saying, oh, you don't want to do any medical intervention whatsoever. And here are a whole bunch of natural interventions. But, they're still interventions. Castor oil is still a intervention. And trying to do the miles circuit at the end of your pregnancy is still trying to get your baby to come out before they're ready. The spicy foods, the pineapple, the dates, all of that, the perineal massage, preparing your body. You don't need to prepare your body. Your body is already preparing. You need to be preparing your mind. You need to be preparing to go into your intuition. That's what you need to be doing. Your body is already set to go. Do those things help a little? Sure, they help. But at the same time, you don't need them. They're just an extra, sort of like when you have a video and I say there's a transcript too. You don't need the transcript. If you don't get the transcript, that's okay. You're not going to lose anything. I'm still giving you the information. If you need to have access to additional resources, you can reach out to the team. You can go and get some of my other videos. You can go check out the playlists. It's not going to stop you. It just makes things easier. So recognizing that if you are going one way or the other, trying to push on the outside and you are following other people's maps, this then doesn't allow you to tap into your intuition and you're more likely to have those interventions. Finally, it sabotages your physiological process because birth is instinctual. Birth is something that your body is designed to do in its own way, in its own time. If you're following the outside mainstream advice and you are not tuning into your intuition first, then what this does is it distracts you and you're in your thinking brain, your neocortex. If you're in your neocortex, then what this does is it overrides your ability to be in your, what Ina May Gaston says, let your monkey do it, your primal brain. And your primal brain is when you go into the labor trance. If you want to know more about this, I suggest you check out Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage, especially reading Eve's story, because that is going to be the most helpful part for you to really understand this through story. And of course, Ina May's Guide to Childbirth is still a standard in the industry as well when it comes to understanding natural birth and how to basically let your monkey do it. So how did we get into this mess? Well, we got into this mess because at a certain point, birth stopped being instinctive and started being controlled. And the more birth started to get controlled, the more it got traumatic. And the more traumatic it got, the more complications happened. Over generations of complications happened, and women started to think that it was them. They were gaslit to think it was them. And then the medical profession came in as the white coat saviors, mostly men. They had this idea that women's bodies were broken and defective. And then they implemented their tools. Their tools then led to more complications, which they then managed with more interventions. And then the cascade of interventions was so established and ingrained within the industry that women started to think we all died in childbirth. When the reality is that maybe it was something else. Maybe it was the nutrition. Maybe it was the fear. Maybe it was the fact that doctors didn't wash their hands. Maybe it was the fact that they were doing things to women in labor. If you disturb a mammal when they are giving birth, this can lead to complications with the baby. This can lead to complications with the mother. You do not want to disturb a mammal that is giving birth, but we disturb women all the time. So if you really want to understand this deeper, I did go into this in the final video of the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth Challenge. And then if you really, really like the deeper dive, then Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage by Rachel Reed, in the first half of the book, she goes right deep into that, her story of birth. And you can start to see what was really going on, why it's like this, why we really need to shift the birth culture away from fear. Because as long as you're afraid of birth, you're easily controlled by it. As long as you're afraid, you're going to defer to those experts. And as long as you're afraid, you're not going to question what those experts are telling you. So the empowered birth method is all about coming to your birth from a place of power instead of a place of fear. In fact, that is one of the biggest components of the empowered birth method is shifting your mindset away from fear to be able to transcend those fears, to transform those fears, to transmute those fears so that they don't control you anymore. So that instead you are aiming for your true natural birth, you have your backup plans, and you are in the driver's seat. You are the birth consumer. Because the other side of this, why mainstream birth education is so prevalent, and why a lot of the fringe stuff on free birth and home birth and everything, why that is trendy, but often buried, and why you're not getting the information you really need is because, certain organizations actually paid for certain books to become bestsellers. Certain organizations often pay to have certain books in print in massive quantities. And certain organizations also have a big advertising budget. And certain organizations are really good at then having their own recommendations that, if midwives were in charge, would not be in place. And midwives are constantly fighting against this. But because of the way that birth was taken away a lot of the times and the way that women were treated in certain parts of history and her story, you can then kind of see how things got eroded. Again, I talk about this inside the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth Challenge. But the big takeaway is that if you want to change an organization, you can't change it from the inside. Think about this if you've got a big company, and in this company, you have got a CEO that is just focused on profit, convenience, and liability. And then at the bottom, you have all the employees that are looking at this and they're like, none of this is actually working for any of our clients. But the CEO is like, yeah, but I've also put things in place so that they can't really go elsewhere because I've got it in good with the insurance companies and they won't cover anything outside of our organization. And, because of that, we've also got a fear campaign with the media. And, we just keep gaslighting people into thinking that we saved them. So, of course, they're just going to keep coming back. But, I have a philosophy, and this came up right back in 2014 after I found out what was going on. It's like supply and demand, change or GTFO of maternity care. And I talk about how to get rid of those category 5s who are really just in it for the money and the prestige and the power. Because if we get rid of those and we have the right people in the right places, then we can shift it, because it really is going to take us. In order for the organizations to change, the consumer has to stop buying. The consumer has to change the menu. The consumer has to change the product, not the organization. If you don't buy into what they're selling, they can't sell it to you. And if you are not buying what they're selling and you're showing others that you are not buying what they're selling, and you are showing them that actually there's something else over here that's even better, then guess where the market is going to go? Exactly. So the aim of the empowered birth method and the empowered birth movement is to give you more options. Because if we can shift the way that our birth culture is, then we are no longer going to fall into those natural birth traps, because those natural birth traps won't exist. You won't have your confidence undermined. You won't end up crumbling under the pressure and getting those interventions. And your physiological birth process will be supported, not sabotaged. There's a lot of really amazing birth workers out there who are supporting physiological birth. There's OBs that I follow. There's midwives I follow. There are doulas I follow and nurses, but their voices are not as loud as a lot of others. And if their voices aren't that loud because they don't have the reach or they don't have the budget to be able to put into ads, and they actually don't want to splash their ads all over the place because they're focused on something much more substantial, like maybe opening birth houses or having their own practice instead of running through the organization itself, then what this does is it allows those louder voices to keep going and keep perpetuating that fear. So that is why I basically have the empowered birth method. And this is also why we have 5 pillars, and you need to optimize all 5. You need the right mindset. You need to get past your fear. You need to have your vision, and you need to know your rights. You need the right education. You need to know about the context of physiological birth versus natural birth perpetuated in our mainstream birth culture and how it actually sabotages you. You need to understand about the right environment. Where are you going to feel safe? And what spaces are more conducive for learning without having the gatekeeping? Because one thing that drives me crazy is when somebody is perpetuating a lot of fear and misinformation, and they just happen to have a label on their name, like MD or RN, or, something that basically makes them sound like they have the authority, but they close their comments. They don't allow everybody to comment. It's curated. And because it's curated, nobody can challenge their narrative. So once you feel safe in your environment and you have the right resources, then you also need those right facilitators. You need the people who are the experts, but also understand that you are the one birthing, that you are your own best expert. They're just providing you information. They are a guide. They recognize that you are hiring a service, and they are willing to put their skills to use the way that you need them to be put to use, not to scare you, not to control you, not to make your birth fit into any narrow little box, but to actually facilitate your process. As a virtual doula, I don't tell my clients what to do during their births. When I'm attending a birth, I am holding space for that birth to unfold. And sometimes my clients make choices that I wouldn't have made. And at the same time, they are their choices. And they are making them from their place of power, not a place of fear. That is the most important thing. As long as my client is fully in their intuition and they are not afraid, then whatever choice they make is right for them. But they have to get past that fear first. Because if they're making a decision from fear, they tend to regret it afterwards. Finally, you need that right support. Your friends, your family, the people around you, and your partner needs to be on board. Because if your partner is perpetuating the same mainstream crap that's going to lead to unnecessary medical interventions or undermining your confidence, they need to get that programming out. And that is another piece of what I teach within my programs. And I also do this at a deeper level when I'm coaching my couples, because I tend to bring the partner in as well to make sure that they are the rock that my client really needs. So now you know a little bit more about the empowered birth method. And if you want to go deeper with that, I highly, highly suggest that you go and get my book, Your Empowered Birth, because that is really where I'm addressing the mainstream. That book is basically the starting off point of what I created. And then I created the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth Challenge way back in 2020. And then after that, I created the Empowered Birth Workshop. But Reset Your Mindset comes first, then Your Empowered Birth, and finally Your Empowered Birth Workshop. If you want to go deeper with that, I do have other programs as well, and I have the laser coaching option. But first, I'm going to just let you know you need to go through the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth Mini Challenge. This is really important because it is going to address everything in mainstream. It is going to address everything within your formal birth education, and it is going to address those hidden views of your family and friends so that you can unlearn it and come to your birth from a place of power instead of fear. So as I mentioned before, I have the 3 paths to empowered birth. Premium coaching is not available for everyone. I only run my classes at certain times of the year. They are live workshops, and I also tend to keep the list very small. I don't do giant workshops. I want to make sure that if you are attending, that you are going to have the most intimate environment possible. Now, if I was running a summit and I had a whole bunch of speakers, that is completely different. But if you were actually attending a class, I'd probably only have about 12 students in that class. So recognizing that these groups are very intimate, I usually do about 3 to 5 within my mistress minds, and I do one-to-one maybe once every couple of years. And my coaching queens themselves, they also are told, focus on your mission, focus on yourself, focus on your kids, and then take on whatever calls you want in addition to that for the supplementary income and to support the empowered birth movement. And again, that's only 15 minutes. So we are very careful about who we let in, and we want you to do the work, and we want to make sure that this is something that you can actually afford. So if premium coaching is not available for you, or we redirect you, we're more likely to give you self-study. That's the next path. With self-study, you have a course that you're going through, and you're creating the idea of what you want to learn. Through that, you have journal prompts, you are unlearning your fears, you are reprogramming yourself to become the birth consumer and the birth visionary, at the same time that you are getting the information in whatever area you want to learn about. The signature program to start with is your Empowered Birth Workshop. You just go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and you can check that out in the self-study path if you want to know more about the workshop itself. There is a button to click, and you can go and check that out. There's other self-study programs that I'm going to be creating in the future. And then in addition to that, if you really like someone to look over your homework and walk you through the process, maybe look over your birth plan, whatever it is. I mean, Rebecca did this. She went through my workshop and then she reached out to me and said, can you look over my birth plan? And I did. And then we ended up working together for 3 months for her to plan her empowered birth, which culminated in her having her home birth after 2 previous C-sections. And she took her power back. And she's never been the same since. She's just absolutely thriving. She knows now what she's capable of. And you know, the thing is that if you go through the self-study path and at any point you're like, I do want some additional support, then you can always upgrade to self-study VIP. It's less than the price of groceries. And finally, if money is tight or you're not sure yet if you want to dive into self-study just yet, if you've just found me, that's totally okay. We have the do-it-yourself path. Just keep following these videos. Like, share, subscribe to our channel, pay it forward, pass it on. Comment into the actual videos themselves. I do read those comments. If you have any urgent questions, you can always reach out to the team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. And if you want to subscribe to our Empowered Birth Community newsletter, you can again go to our start guide, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide. Go into the do-it-yourself path and find out more about how to optimize that path as well, and to get onto the newsletter and subscribe to our Empowered Birth Toolkit. Okay, so now you know about those 3 paths. Let's quickly recap, okay? Why is birth education in the mainstream such a detrimental natural birth trap? Well, because we have a dichotomy. We are still looking on the outside to others, and it undermines our confidence because rather than trusting ourselves and our intuition, we're constantly looking to other people to tell us what they would do, what they would recommend. This undermines your confidence in thinking maybe it's me, maybe what I want isn't right, and maybe I'm a bad mom. And it reinforces that mommy martyr syndrome that I really, really want to get rid of in our society. It teaches you what to think, not how to think. Second, it's undermining your confidence so much that you're more likely to agree to interventions that lead to those natural birth traps. Go and check out the entire series if you want to know what those natural birth traps are. I also have a list on my website. You just go to the start guide inside the True Natural Birth section, and you're going to find that list. Or, you know, if the transcript is available, it's linked in there. So finally, this is sabotaging your physiological birth process. Even within the natural birth community, I often see that moms are suggesting things that are sabotaging the physiological birth process. If you really want to understand true natural birth, then I'm going to tell you again, read Rachel Reed's book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. Dissect it. Figure out, oh, that's why things don't work the way they are supposed to work. Because of the fact that we were told that you needed to do something on the outside, that our bodies are defective machines. The natural birth community is still doing things on the outside to try to speed the process along. It's still an intervention. It just has a different packaging, but it's still the same thing being pushed over and over again. And fish can't see the water they swim in. So we have that dichotomy, and it keeps you stuck. You need to be able to have your own map. You need to be able to trust your own intuition. You need to be able to basically come to your birth from a place of power instead of a place of fear. And that is why the empowered birth method is so powerful, because rather than telling you what to think, I'm instead giving you the map to your own empowered birth, so that you can tune into your own intuition and get the resources that are going to best fit you, so that you can custom craft your own map and no longer rely on other people, no longer have to feel like you have no options. Because the thing about relying on other people is that if they happen to say, oh, we don't support that, well, what do? Are you going to give up because they don't give you what you want? Or are you going to find a new way to get the birth you want without having to fight, without having to beg, and without having to compromise? So again, thank you so much for watching the Empowered Birth series on the natural birth traps. If this is your first video, I'm going to encourage you to go and check out the rest of them. I'm also going to encourage you to follow the rest of this series that's coming up next, which is going to be the cesarean traps. These are the things that lead directly to, you guessed it, a cesarean. So when we start running those again, I'm just going to tell you that it's going to give you an even deeper overview of a lot of the natural birth traps that we have already covered. If you want to know a little preview about what is coming next in a few weeks from now, then what you're going to want to do is go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and that is going to give you the overview of those cesarean traps. So you will get that little teaser. But you know, as of recording this video, it is the summertime and my kids are about to start summer vacation. So my studio is going dark for the next 2 months, which means that I have decided to take a step back. There won't be any more of the Empowered Birth series. You will get some additional videos that will come in still during the week. So you'll still have some of those. But we will start up the cesarean traps again in the next few weeks, so stay tuned. They will come. And in the meantime, if you want to subscribe to the community newsletter, you just go to the website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and get started there. Inside of the do-it-yourself path, there is a link to the toolkit. Or hey, if the transcript is available, I've linked the actual spot where you can get the toolkit itself. Also, if you go and get your Empowered Birth workshop, you're automatically subscribed to the newsletter because of the fact that it does come through email. So watch for the newsletter every single week because I dive deep into that one too. All right, so thank you so much again for watching. Whether you're birthing a baby, birthing a business or creative project or a movement, or rebirthing a new version of yourself, Empowering Moms is here for you. So have a happy empowered birth journey, and I will see you again soon. Namaste.